Good Friday morning. Thanks so much for joining us on KARE 11 News Now. I'm Megan McPherson. This morning, the war in Iran reaching the critical 60-day milestone. Without authorization from Congress, the law now requires President Trump to withdraw U.S. forces. But so far, Congress is holding off on taking any further action as the Trump administration continues to defend military operation. Meanwhile, Americans are feeling the impact at home as fuel prices just continue to rise. NBC's Alice Barr has the latest.
60 days into the war with Iran, a fragile ceasefire is holding, though American warships are on patrol, enforcing a blockade of Iranian ports. While on Capitol Hill, Republican leadership is blocking a vote to curb President Trump's war powers, despite a deadline today for congressional approval.
I don't think we have any active kinetic military bombing, firing, anything like that right now. We're trying to broker a peace, and I would be very reluctant to get in front of the administration in the midst of these very sensitive negotiations.
A 1973 law outlines that the president must stop and remove military forces from conflict if Congress doesn't authorize a war within 60 days. Pressed by NBC's Ryan Noble, Speaker Johnson said, "We're not at war." Again, citing the ceasefire. A senior administration official gave the same reasoning, telling NBC News hostilities terminated when the ceasefire began. Democrats reject that.
Being in the region, not engaged actively in kinetic force or kinetic action isn't what the law says. After 60 days, he has 30 days to withdraw.
Talks are stalled over a broader peace deal.
They want to make a deal badly. We have a problem because nobody knows for sure who the leaders are.
And with shipping through the vital Strait of Hormuz still choked off, gas prices keep pushing higher. President Trump offering assurances while acknowledging the conflict continues.
The gas will go down. As soon as the war's over, it'll drop like a rock.
Back on Capitol Hill, Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth again defending the war and a new $1.5 trillion defense budget request for 2027, heavily criticized by Democrats. That funding request is partially to replace weapons used in the war so far, though Secretary Hegseth also pointed to weapons that were sent to Ukraine under the last administration. The Defense Department now says the war with Iran has cost $25 billion up to this point. In Washington, Alice Barr, NBC News.
We're live in our nation's capital, where this morning the longest government shutdown in history is over. President Trump signed a bill funding most of Homeland Security just hours after it passed the House. The bill will reopen key parts of the department, including TSA, but it leaves out funding for ICE. Democratic lawmakers refuse to fund immigration enforcement without significant changes in the wake of the shootings of Renee Good and Alex Preddy. Now Republicans will have to find a way to fund ICE without Democratic votes using a complex budget reconciliation process. Developing this morning, the Trump administration says it's freezing another $91 million in Medicaid funding for Minnesota. The Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services posted this video online saying they have new concerns about fraud after a recent DOJ investigation into child care centers in the state. And this comes after the federal government deferred more than $250 million from Minnesota back in February. In a statement, Governor Walz argued this is a transparent effort from the Trump administration to cut funding for working people. He says the state will not stand for this, quote, continued campaign of retribution. This morning, St. Paul homicide detectives are investigating a shooting at the Sibley Park Apartments off of East 7th Street and North Sibley Street. This is brand new video from the scene. Police say a man called just before 9 p.m. saying he had been shot. He was brought to the hospital where he later died. Investigators are working to find out what led up to this shooting, and they say they don't believe there is a threat to the community. And in Minneapolis, crews were on scene at two fires in just the last few hours at the Carmel Mall and Montclair Apartments. This was the scene at Montclair just before 2 a.m. Fire crews told us the fire started in an apartment on the second floor, and thankfully everyone was evacuated. People living there were loaded onto buses, unable to go back in. They would not say if there were any injuries. About an hour later, crews were called to this scene, a fire at the Carmel Mall. They told us a kitchen fire started at the Deg Deg Grill. They said the damage wasn't extensive and there were no injuries. Right now, police are looking for a 22-year-old man accused of posing as a White Bear Lake High School student after he didn't show up for court. Court officials say Kelvin Lubke skipped his first appearance on fraud charges. He's accused of using a foreign birth certificate to enroll at the high school last fall. Court documents say his story started to unravel after he was arrested on outstanding warrants. Someone who saw his mugshot recognized him as a student going by a different name. We have all new video into the newsroom this morning, a huge showing of support for the Richfield officer shot in the hand earlier this week. He was just released from the hospital yesterday. Police say they were confronting a carjacking suspect early Wednesday morning when the person ran and took out a gun. The suspect was shot and killed, and the BCA is investigating. In just hours, concession workers at Target Field will vote on whether to authorize a strike. The union representing these workers says they are trying to negotiate a contract that, quote, respects their work. If a strike is authorized, it can be called by the union's committee at any time. Trending this morning, crews are working to turn a vacant Lunds & Byerly in downtown St. Paul into an Aldi. This is video from the ribbon-cutting ceremony yesterday. The neighborhood hasn't had a grocery store since last month, and one resident tells us the community is now one step closer to having fresh produce again.
It left such a hole because first of all, it took a long time to get a grocery store in the first place. And it changed the whole vitality of the city, you know, the convenience.
St. Paul Mayor Khalil Herr says reopening a grocery store across from Pedro Park was a top ask. Aldi plans to open by the end of the summer. Let's turn to sports now. What an electric night at Target Center as the Timberwolves end the Nuggets season to advance to round 2 of the playoffs. Wolves took down the Nuggets 110-98 just before midnight. And then in St. Paul, a celebration a decade in the making. The Wild moving on to the second round of the Stanley Cup playoffs, clinching for the first time since 2015, getting it done against Dallas in Game 6 of the series 5-2 with 3 goals in just the last period. Minneapolis Animal Care and Control is hoping to clear their shelters by offering free adoptions today. They say every adoption not only gives an animal a permanent home, but it also opens up space for others. Their free adoption event is from 1 p.m. to 5 p.m. at their location on 17th Avenue. And if you're looking for something to do this weekend, head over to the Orpheum Theater to catch Harry Potter and the Cursed Child. The 6-time Tony Award-winning play's arrival in Minneapolis is a full circle moment for the actor who plays the title character. Here's Heidi Wigdahl.
In the wizarding world of Harry Potter, at Hogwarts, there are 4 houses. But for the actor who plays the title character, Minnesota will always be home.
It's everything I wanted to tell this company of actors that we would have here. It's been that and more.
Nick Dillenberg plays Harry Potter as an adult in Harry Potter and the Cursed Child. The story picks up 19 years after the Battle of Hogwarts with the next generation. An unlikely friendship forms between Harry's son and Draco Malfoy's.
Magic is the language of this world.
And they've brought that magic to the stage.
I think the coolest part about it is it's Victorian era magic. This is old school stuff, and you'll see one of those tricks within the first 60 seconds of the play.
Nick originally auditioned for the role 2 years ago and didn't get it.
But then 11 months later, I got offered the second year of the tour. Out of nowhere. And the first thing I checked, by the way, was, does it come to Minneapolis? It came to Chicago in the first year, but it was coming to Minneapolis this year, which is a really special treat for me because my mom hasn't seen me on stage since high school. So 2001, yeah.
Nick grew up in Northeast Minneapolis and went to St. Anthony Village High School.
I was a sports guy, and one day I was sort of dragged to auditions for a play called Arsenic and Old Lace. I got football, I don't have any time for this. She said, okay, sure, no problem, we won't. The next day I got cast.
Nick became spellbound by the theater. Now at home, his mom saw him on stage.
Yeah, she came this past Sunday. I was an emotional mess. You know, when I'm talking about my mother who gave her life for Harry, I say, you know, this really incredible thing that my mother was able to do for me. It can't not hit on both levels. It's happening for Harry and Nick simultaneously.
While there's plenty to leave the audience in awe, the charm lies in the magic of those you consider home.
I'm just so excited to be able to share it with this city. I'm so honored.
Heidi Wigdahl, KARE 11 News.
Such an inspiring story. If you want to get tickets, Harry Potter and the Cursed Child runs through May 17th at the Orpheum. Nick says the teacher that got him into acting, Carrie Steinbach, will be coming to the show at some point to watch her former student. Stick with us. More news and weather is coming up after the break.